Welcome back to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. Today, we are tackling a topic that is crucial for any company aiming to build lasting success: the employee customer connection and how it fuels the creation of products people truly care about. We often focus on external marketing and customer outreach, but what about the internal engine that drives product development? How do we ensure that our teams are as passionate about our products as we want our customers to be? How do we bridge the gap between building a product and building something that resonates on a deeper emotional level with customers? To help us navigate these critical questions, I'm so excited to welcome David Fradin. David is a renowned product management expert and the author of the insightful book, Building Insanely Great Products, with decades of experience helping companies transform their product strategies. And by the way, some of them are quite big ass, like Apple and Hewlett Packard. David brings a wealth of knowledge to today's discussion. David, I'm super excited to have you today. Thank you very much for being with me.
Glad to be with you.
David, so today you are somewhere in the depth of United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm actually in Silicon Valley, which is
Oh, why
south
the
of,
hell did I understand that you were somewhere else? You are in the Silicon Valley.
yeah. Well, the previous 2 weeks I was in Maui, so that's still part of the United States.
Okay. Tell me, how did you move this transition that you had in your corporate career into developing your own company? And in fact, you spend a lot of time sharing your knowledge. I understood that you spend time in academics and you spend time also teaching some other companies about how to manage a product. Uh, why?
About 35% of all new products developed each year fail in the marketplace, and that represents a loss to humanity of about $1 trillion a year. So if there's anything I could do to enhance the possibilities and the probabilities of product success, that's what I'm focused on. So my book, Building Insanely Great Products, my other books, Organizing and Managing Insanely Great Products, and the widely published 796-page pamphlet called Successful Product Design and Management Toolkit, all covers in depth the 5 keys to product success.
Hmm. When you mentioned your numbers about the success rate of products, I remember the numbers that I had back in my corporate life with an American company that in fact it was only 5% of products that succeeded to have a 3% market share in the targeted market. That was super low. But what I have to say is that this company had lots of money. So they didn't care if the success rate was that low. But it still, don't you think it's a little bit low? If it was an FMCG company, that was like super low.
Yeah, my 35% comes from a study done by a couple of professors at the University of North Carolina. And they looked at all of the claims of failure rates like 80%, 85%, and so forth. And they found that some of those claims were self-serving for those that were pushing their consulting businesses. And they concluded that's how they concluded at 35%. And I prefer that more conservative number. But still, it's an enormous expense that could be avoided. And if you make the expense, at least you can get a return on your investment rather than losing the entire investment as that $1 trillion a year represents.
My observation back in my days in corporate was that a lot of the marketeers, the ones that were supposed to develop, create new products, were spending more time creating beautiful PowerPoints of 300 pages, 300 slides and more, instead of doing what they have to do, talk with people. Uh, do you still observe that? In the United States, has it changed, this approach of I'm a marketeer and I know my customers, so I need to do it in front of the computer instead of talking. Has it improved in the last 10 years?
I think so. My number one client is Cisco, and I've trained nearly half of all their product managers worldwide. And what I teach them is before you start the development of your product, you need to put together what I call a product market strategy. And let me emphasize the difference here. A market is like a grocery store, it's a place where you go to buy something. Marketing is the activity that you were just earlier describing, trying to get people or companies to go to that store and buy something, to go to that market and buy something. So the thing that is typically jumped over, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, is this notion that's come out of some angel investors and some venture capitalists here in Silicon Valley, which they call ready, fire, aim, as opposed to ready, aim, fire. And that's part of the reason for that 35% loss. And then that ethos has been exaggerated by people like Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook and Elon Musk, and that is move fast and break things. Uh, well, you don't have to break things if you move in the right direction, if you aim first. So, what I advocate for product success, and this also applies to services, which are just intangible products, is go out and understand what it is your prospective customer wants to do. Why do they want to do it? When do they want to do it? Where do they want to do it? How do they want to do it? What's standing in their way? And how satisfied are they with the current way of getting it done? And how important is what it is that they want to do? That is the genesis of design thinking, which originated actually back in the early 1980s from a company called IDEO, which was hired as a consultant by Steve Jobs to Apple. And they were responsible, for example, in designing the Apple mouse. Uh, I had the privilege when I was a product manager at Apple to be at the first design thinking presentation where their products were laid out. And I brought several of their products to market as a product manager at Apple at the time. And slowly, companies are beginning to pick up this notion of design thinking, which again starts with understanding what it is that your customer wants to do. And the way you figure that out is first you go out and observe what people or companies are trying to do. And a good story there is allegedly Henry Ford in the early part of the last century was thinking about building an affordable car, and he went out and asked people on the streets of Dearborn, not far in Michigan, where I grew up in Detroit. And he asked them, would they like to have a car or would they like to have an automobile? And their response was, no, I just want a faster horse. Well, if he had taken the first step in design thinking, and that is observe what your prospective customers are trying to do, he would have noticed that they were hitting their horses with sticks in order to get through town faster. And maybe that's part of the reason why the first name for that vehicle with an engine was a horseless carriage, because people would understand what that is as opposed to an automobile or a car. So then the next step after you observe what it is that people want to do is to interview 40 to 80 people or customers to confirm your suspicions of your observations. Then after you do that, you do a survey of about 800 to 1,200 of the people or companies in your target market. And from that, you get statistics as to what it is that they want to do, what is their persona so that you know where they live, what media do they consume, so that when you run your advertising after your product introduction, you're communicating where they live and where they get their information rather than someplace else. And then the last thing you do, if you have a big data from the internet, you can do analytics on it and even apply artificial intelligence to that data to help refine what it is that your product is going to do.
There is this misconception in companies who are sometimes having a little bit too much money or they don't have control on their money to outsource this discovery of the customer. According to you, is it worthwhile to go and ask a big ass marketing intelligence, marketing research company, do the job for me? Or is it like go and do it yourself as a company?
Well, if the market intelligence company goes out and just relies upon the market research reports of other companies, that is a top-down approach. And I'm quite familiar with that because I used to be the associate director of the personal computer industry service at a market research firm called DataQuest, which was acquired a few years ago by the
Yeah.
Gartner Group. And what we would do is call up the manufacturers of personal computers, and at that time there was about 200 of them, and ask them what their sales were and what they project their sales to be in the future. Well, it turned out they really had absolutely no idea because they were guessing, pulling it out of their numbers out of thin air. And on occasion, these large companies will misrepresent what it is that they've sold in the previous year so that when a market research group puts together a market share report, they can say, for example, XYZ company had 30% market share. And that's sometimes caused because their marketing manager exaggerated how many units or what their dollar sales were. So you can't really rely upon that. And that's why I propose the bottom up approach by observing, interviewing to refine your survey and surveying in order to come up with your numbers. Then the other problem with the big data and the analytics is it's all based upon what's known as wisdom of the crowds, which came out of Stanford University in the 90s. And it was the basis for the recommendation engines at places like Amazon, Netflix, and Google. And it says things like people who looked at this, people who bought this, people who like this. Well, the wisdom of the crowds sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work. For example, if a crowd is really smart, how come they go into a bar where there's live entertainment, a fire breaks out, and they all try to leave through the same door? And the few that survive are the ones that say, hey, wait a minute, there's got to be a stage entrance. I'll go back around the stage and go out that door rather than tripping over everybody and getting killed by the door. So that's where you have to be careful in terms of using wisdom of the crowds. And of course, the wisdom of the crowds is the social recommendation engine that fuels social media, in particular Meta and Facebook. And it adds this thing that a lie can go around the world 10 times before the truth gets its shoes on. And that has resulted in a great social disruption worldwide and in major problems in people getting along with other people, fueled by conspiracy theories that are driven by these algorithms based upon wisdom of the crowd.
I have the impression, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm thinking just loud that maybe the wisdom of the crowd helps when you want to fine-tune a product, but less if you want to be innovative and create a disruptive product. Because I'm thinking about the products that Apple has developed. Some of them is not, they didn't ask, what do you want? They created a market by understanding maybe the needs, the internal needs that we have as people, like the inspirational needs, like I want a status, and that's why we had an expensive iPhone, or beautifully designed products. I have the impression that it works only to improve things, this wisdom of the crowds, but not to disrupt the market.
Yeah, that's true. The disruption occurs if what it is, the product that you developed or service does something so much better than any other way. That's when the market disruption occurs. I wrote an article which is on my website, spicecatalyst.com, and I've also posted it on LinkedIn and on Medium. Mark Zuckerberg says that in 5 years he's going to be competing directly with Apple. And the
Hmm.
problem Apple has is it takes too long for them to bring a product to market. That his approach of move fast and break things will enable him to surpass Apple in just 5 years. Well, he's completely wrong. In the first place, it's going to take quite some time for another company to get into the ecosystem of the hardware and software of iPhones, iPads, Macintoshes, and iCloud, and the applications that they have. And the second is Tim Cook just said recently that the company is going to focus on health, which is a very good idea because health is a huge marketplace and
Hmm.
it's just beginning to be of scientific, creative solutions like the COVID vaccine and other things like that.
Hmm.
And Apple takes its time to study what it is that people want to do. Then they develop a product for that and they test it extensively and they don't bother to introduce it until the market is ready. And as Tony Ulrich at Synergem says, and he built his company based upon the outcome-based innovation that I think it was either an MIT or Harvard professor wrote a series of books on. He says you've got to find 15 unmet needs before you'll have a successful product. And that's what Apple does is they wait until those 15 unmet needs are there. They know that that's when the window of opportunity for the product opens. And then they notice over time that if that 15 unmet needs are being satisfied very, very well by other products, then that's when they obsolete the product and shut the product or product line down and use it as just before then as what the Boston Consulting Group calls a cash cow. Make no further research and development investments, just get out as much profit as you possibly can.
Hmm. David, are you saying that companies like Apple, they have a pipeline of innovation that they have put on the shelves waiting for the right moment and the public is not aware of it?
Yes, and a lot of it you see that in the patents that Apple applies for. They invent these things, and we may never see it on the market until the market is ready for it.
Hmm.
Uh, and by the way, innovation is a big word. It's a lot like the word entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is French for a product manager. Innovation is nothing more than doing something faster, better, and higher quality, or for example, in the case of the Apple Watch, with better style. So if you could do something better, faster, less cost, and or with style, that's an innovative way of addressing that particular thing that the company or the individual wants to do. And
Hmm.
you don't have to stay away from the word need or want, because if you ask someone what they need or want, they have to be able to define what the problem is that they have, and they have to define what the solution is to tell you that that's what they need or want. And most people are not capable of doing both of those things.
That's true. I want to come back to the point of thinking about the employees of an organization. In your experience, what is the fundamental mindset shift that we need to do to move people from selling a product? People, when I say people, I'm talking about employees, moving out from selling a product to making people, to making care about that product, to be genuinely caring about that product. Is there something that we can do to have this mindset shift?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is to take all the copies of Ian Rand's Atlas Shrugged out in the parking lot and set it on fire because that started influencing American businesses in the 70s and the 80s. And I recall sitting in the old executive office building, the Eisenhower office building in Washington, D.C., next to the White House. And the head of a special consultant of the president at the time, Bill Magruder, on technology, asked me if I'd ever heard about that book. And I said, no, I hadn't. He says, well, everybody here on the White House staff is reading it. This was the beginning of the Republican Party saying that the only thing that a company needs to do is to earn profits, let everything else will take care of itself, which I didn't think that was right. I felt that if society gave a company the right to earn profits, then they have an obligation to give back to society. And in
Hmm.
fact, that was exactly the philosophy that Dave Packard had and the other founders of Hewlett Packard. And I had the opportunity to work with Dave. I handled his personal PR when Apple recruited me to come to the corporate PR department excuse me, HP recruited me to come to the corporate PR department.
Hmm.
So he also fought, he was a former deputy secretary of defense before he came back to be chairman of the board of Hewlett Packard. And he fought for some accounting changes in the national international standards for accounting, which maximized profits and market share. It caused a change in corporate thinking from an annual basis to a quarterly basis. And Wall Street started focusing on quarterly sales, quarterly revenues, quarterly profitability, which then drives the stock market. And that immediately shortens the long range view of and planning of all major corporations. So the thing that's creating other issues in society is this overall focus just on profits and just on getting a return on investment, as opposed to, and an answer to your question, is customer satisfaction.
Hmm.
Everybody at Apple is focused on the customer's satisfaction. I'll give an example. Back around 2005, I was using Microsoft Windows computers, and I had to have two of them on my desk at the same time because one of them crashes, and while it's rebooting, I can get work done on the other one, which gave me the argument that Microsoft's positioning is constantly crashing. That and if you remember, if you wanted to stop your Windows computer, you had to go to the start button. Now, what kind of
Hmm.
genius thought that people would innately know to stop? You go to start, and so I was having trouble with my Windows computers. I called up Microsoft technical support. They said, "Well, for $220, we'll tell you that you found a bug of ours." And come on now. So I dumped the PCs, went back to Macintosh uh, after Steve Jobs had returned to the company a few years earlier. And if I had a problem, I could go to the Apple website and still do this today. I could put in my phone number and they'll call me when it's convenient to me rather than me having to sit 45 minutes listening to horrible music on hold in order to talk to tech support to tell me that I have to pay them because I found a bug in their software. And the whole experience with Apple, the total customer experience from the moment you walk into the Apple store and you want to buy the product, you buy it right there from the clerk. You don't have to stand in line at a cash register. They put it in a nice little bag. You go home. It's a delightful experience unpacking it because it's sort of like a jewel. And all the way through setting it up, getting it started. Now, with the most recent release of the Mac operating system, if I want to change from one Mac to another Mac, I just take a picture essentially of the QR code on the screen, and all my settings are transferred over automatically. Whereas with Windows, oh my God, it was like a day and a half effort to put in all your logins, your passwords, and all that kind of stuff. So the key here is overall customer satisfaction. And Apple and Tim Cook has talked about this. They feel that if they focus on that, the profits will take care of themselves. Thank you very much. Rather than the other approach that companies take, and that is screw the customer, try to get as much money out of them as possible. And that results in a political environment inside the company where people compete against one another and cut each other down and destroy each other's reputations so that they could get a higher paying job within the organization.
You have made my brain go from these horrible images of a blue screen of Microsoft since I started using it, which is, by the way, was in 90 something. Uh, and to another anecdote that happened to me. That, I mean, you were talking about this customer experience of Apple. And when you go to, I told you that I have spent some time in the Middle East. When you go to the Middle East, you find very young people who can help you if you have any type of challenges. Back in Japan, in Tokyo, I remember it was 65 years old ladies explaining, speaking a fluent English, talking about computers to the average age in Japan. I found it that amazing that they had they had localized so much to the specific needs because an old lady will be afraid to speak to a young guy, but this old lady knew everything possible, and she was so kind. I mean, I'm impressed. And behind this, I have the impression, and you have mentioned it several times, moving from profits to a bigger aim that can be customer satisfaction, can be happiness. Some people use the word happiness, by the way. It doesn't matter, but it's about finding the purpose. And my question to you is, now we have these leaders in a corporation. How is it? What would be the best way for these leaders to communicate the purpose of either the organization or the product that they're developing to their internal teams? How do we make it easy so that the internal team gets it and embrace it?
Well, that's where you constantly have these listing posts to see and ask and hear and observe how satisfied are your customers with your product. And if you're seeing that your customers are not satisfied, then you fix it. We have a large internet service here called Comcast. And 10, 15 years ago, it was horrible service. I had a situation where my internet kept constantly dropping out. And I was technical enough, I was able to get into the management software on that cable modem. And I noticed that there was a constant recurring error message. I forget exactly what it was. I called up Comcast. Well, actually, you couldn't call up Comcast. You couldn't get anybody to talk to. So I would call up and file a complaint, and they would send a repairman out, and he would say, well, I can only fix the wiring in your home. I can't do anything with the internet connection to the switch out in the street. And I said, but he'll file a report with them. And I said, well, then will you let me know when they think they fixed it? They said, oh, we can't let you talk to them. You only could talk to them through me. So about 25 more service calls later, they finally fixed the problem. Meanwhile, I researched it and I found that there's something like a ranging out request was the error message that a former internet technician in Brazil said what that means is that the switch in the internet is getting wet, probably due to rain. And then I began to create a log that every time it rained, my internet would go out. So I told Comcast that's what the problem is. And they eventually finally fixed it. And I tell this story when I teach at Cisco, which builds those switches. And I said, you know, you guys have all the data on the logs on your modems that are out there. You have all the data on your switches in terms of its performance. Why can't you write a routine to go out there and periodically grab all that data, see what error messages are coming up, and then flag the places where you need to do repairs? And I think Cisco actually developed some software to do exactly that. Uh, And now when my internet goes out, I get a text message from Comcast saying that we know the internet has gone out in your area and we're working on fixing it. Or we've got some scheduled maintenance coming up. So don't be concerned if you can't get on the internet between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. or something like that. So it again goes back to designing the systems to deliver on customer satisfaction. And Comcast over the last 15 years has gotten significantly better than they were before. And I hear that they might have hired some customer satisfaction experts from Apple, and a telephone company here in the United States, AT&T, was horrible in terms of their customer service. And they too have implemented many of the policies and procedures that Apple pioneered many years ago.
Very often employees are paid to do certain tasks, not to serve a purpose. Is there a way to make it better, this transition from I'm paid to be doing that task, like filing a complaint, instead of the purpose would be make David happy?
Yeah, and I think different companies incentivize their employees to focus on customer satisfaction versus profits. For example, Apple is one big profit center. So all of the parts have to work together in order to accomplish that. Other companies will have profit centers, you know, on the software, on the hardware, on the cloud services, and so forth. And as a result, they compete against each other and create barriers for the total customer experience to be a good customer experience.
Indeed. Is there certain elements from a company culture that are super, super important in order to make this customer centricity?
Well, the important thing there is that you have to have a set of values around which all decision making is made. Hewlett Packard had the HP way, and Apple values were developed as a result of Intel adopting the HP way and then Apple adopting values from Intel. And it covers such things as empathy for our customers, our users, achievement, aggressiveness, positive social contribution, individual performance, team spirit, innovation, vision, individual growth and reward, quality, excellence, and good management. So every time I would go into a meeting at HP or at Apple, everyone held these same values. We use those values as the guide to make around any decisions that we made. And I was writing my book, Building and Scaling Great Products. I wondered, of those companies of the Fortune 500 in 1965, which was the first Fortune 500 list to come out, how many of these companies had values and how many of them followed those values? And I made a list of all 500 of them, and then how many of those companies are still in business? The companies that had values back in 65 supported those values and followed them. They're still in business today. But about 300 of those companies either had no values or they didn't follow their values and they went out of business. So that's an answer to your question. And then you have companies like Volkswagen, who has had very good values. And in fact, when the big scandal came out over their diesel cars, faking the emissions when you connected your measurement device to it, that was 180% degree of opposite to what VW's values were at the time. And I noticed recently that they dropped their values from their website. They don't have them up there anymore. But
Wow.
it's cost VW billions and billions of dollars in lost reputation, lost brand value. And that's the reason why they're paying for electric charging stations to be erected all around the world at no cost to those governments because of failing to follow their own values.
You're totally right, because these 2 points that you have highlighted, first, that if the values maybe today are there, but they are not used. That means they are in the website and nobody reads it. Nobody's able to practice it because they don't even know them. Then you fail. And the other part that you have given with the example of Volkswagen is that these senior leaders, if they don't show their values, they don't practice the values, they don't show with behaviors, then everything is going to be a big fuck up. It's not even worthwhile. And that has an impact on the perception that customers have on your products. Like the example that you have given with Volkswagen is like top in the middle. That's correct. But tell me, once upon a time, and I don't remember in which book I read this story that Apple doesn't go find customers, but they find fans. They create fans that they love the product.
Well, that's just somebody criticizing Apple. 20 years ago, they used to call them Apple fanboys. No, happens to be very satisfied Apple users, and you don't have to insult them.
But, but is that possible also to create this type of passion or an feeling of accountability without within the employees? Is there something that we do to create fans out of employees? I don't take it in the negative side. Fans, like, really, I like it. I love it.
It's called loyalty.
Yeah.
Apple, by continuing to satisfy their customers, have the customer have loyalty to them. I'll give you an example. I bought for my vacation rental condo in Maui a Samsung TV from Sears. After 9 months, the TV stopped working. Sears said that we will provide a 1-year warranty on anything that we sell. They refused to honor their warranty. Sears has now gone out of business. Samsung said that they would honor the warranty. They didn't. And I will never, ever buy another Samsung product ever, never again. So they lost my loyalty. If Apple came out with a car, or if Apple came out with a television set, I wouldn't hesitate to buy it, because they returned my loyalty by being loyal to me, by giving me a return on investment and satisfaction in the use of their product. I'll give you an example. I always thought the tagline that Apple should use, which usually summarizes the brand of the company, and the brand is the promise of the company, or a brand of a product is the promise of the product, should be something along the lines of it just works. The product just works, and it's easy to understand, easy to use, and so forth. It's intuitive. It just works. Whereas in the case of Microsoft, where you have to hit the start key in order to stop the computer, their tagline should be helping more people feel more stupid than any other company in the world.
You made me think about a new question that I didn't forecast it, but now that you're teaching, so teaching inside of corporations and teaching also in universities, should we change the way these university students are learning what they are learning about marketing? Because I know some of the programs in university, they haven't changed much from my times until today. They still use the same basics, the BCG matrix, the 4Ps, and all these frameworks are a waste today. And you know that because you have been working in the front line of what works in order to make products that really work. So should we change the educational system? Should we get rid of these marketing teachers in university and replace them by people like you?
Well, they should be burned right along with Atlas Shrugged. There's very few universities in the world that teach product success, but there's lots of MBA schools that teach finance. And finance is nothing more than measuring and counting the success of the product without focusing on the key things that make the product successful. But it's ingrained. The Wall Street incentives direct people in those directions. The accounting rules focus on the profits rather than on customer satisfaction. I started buying Apple stock in around 2005 because I understood that its focus was on what it is that the customer wants to do. And I only buy stock in companies that understand their customer and are focused on customer satisfaction. And I've done extremely well financially following that investment model versus speculating on Tesla stock or on Bitcoin and any other gold asset someone could or cybercoin asset that someone could dream up.
You have made me think about you have said this sentence a little bit like one of the co-founders of Berkshire Hathaway, the investment firm, not the guy who is still alive, the guy who just died 1 year ago. What was his name?
Munger?
Yes, exactly. He was saying this exactly the same thing because I'm reading again this book about everything that he has said in life. And by the way, it was exactly that. What would you say are today the biggest challenges that companies, and we are not talking only about tech companies because Cisco, yes, big tech, so they are in the front of innovation, FMCGs, oil, construction. What are the biggest challenges companies face today in making their product stand out and resonate with customers?
Well, if they go back to what it is that the customer wants to do, they will be able to develop a product or service that will satisfy their customers. But the bigger challenge is there's about 16 things happening in the world that are significantly going to affect businesses and products in the future. One of them we just saw was a pandemic. There's a possibility we might have another pandemic. Another one is climate change, autonomous vehicles, innovations in food production, distribution, consumption, and disposal. Another one is digital twins, where, for example, companies are working on a digital twin to the human body so that you could test different treatments for different diseases on a digital twin and develop treatments and medicines faster than the current way that we do our clinical trials and product development. We got big data and analytics and wisdoms of the crowds driving things like I talked about earlier, augmented and virtual reality, gene splicing, 3D printing, artificial intelligence has just exploded over the last 3-4 years. Birth rates, you mentioned Japan, has got a major problem with most of their population very old. So they're inventing robots to help take care of the elderly because they can't find enough people to do that. The digital transformation as we move from a mechanical or a chemical-based society into a digitally based society, robotics, new innovations in technology like new computing advances, marketing automation, and then Internet of Things, where our cars can each talk to each other so they don't run into each other, for example, or you could have the innovation of autonomous vehicles. Those are the 16 things people and companies should be thinking about in terms of their product and service planning. That if any of these things come about, how can I use it to my advantage and how can I avoid disaster?
Many companies are a little bit afraid because it looks like a long list of things and they don't have the people with the skills already acquired. And by the way, about AI, most of the companies who are offering services, they are learning at the same time that they are implementing stuff which is a huge risk for corporations. So is there a way to get around this problem that too many things in one shot and we don't have the people? Let's say in a typical, we take in Switzerland, Nestle, the average age is around 38 years old. Most of the people have a degree in business that they have got more than 10 years ago. So how do you teach them? How do you make them learn, explore all these 50 things that they must know?
Well, I identified in my book that Wiley published, Successful Product Design and Management Toolkit, which is used in a couple executive education programs at Loveland University in India and IIPM, the Institute of a very prestigious business school in India. I've identified and spent a whole chapter describing in detail the 130 competencies or skill sets that an organization has to have in order to have product success. And one of those is you need some people that are futurists, people that can project into the future and play what if games. What if we get another pandemic? What if everyone is confined? What can we do to continue to enhance the remote work abilities and productivity for remote work? A company called Zoom, which we are recording this on, took advantage of that, and their business exploded with the pandemic. But Zoom came from people that left WebEx, which was bought by just a few years earlier by Cisco. And the focus there, I know because I attempted to train some of the WebEx people, and they refused to accept the fact that they need to go out and understand what it is that people want to do. And in fact, when I trained Cisco's product managers in Shanghai, I think this was about 2009, they liked me so much that they brought me to the WebEx development campus in Suzhou, about 60 miles west of Shanghai, and brought me to their Christmas party, or no, the New Year's, Chinese New Year's
Oh,
party,
Chinese. Yeah.
where they got up on the stage and sang YMCA in English. But they refused to listen as to the things I talked about in the previous 45 minutes about product success. And Zoom just zoomed right past WebEx.
David, this conversation has been like, it's almost like you have given me a little bit of transmitted some of your wisdom, and now I understand your passion for helping other people acquire this mindset and this knowledge about how to develop great products. I'm really thankful for you taking the time to be in this podcast. I fully recommend to read. You have at least 5 books, if I'm not mistaken, that at least to take the time to read one of the books. I will put the links in below this episode. Uh, and I wanted to ask you, so how do people reach you out if they have questions? How do they contact you?
They can go to spicecatalyst.com. It's one word, and all my contact information is there. They could search for my name on LinkedIn and request to connect on LinkedIn, and then they can send me messages through that. They can send email directly to me at dave@spicecatalyst.com, or they can go to Amazon, any place in the world, type in my name as an author, and all of my books will pop up. And then if they type in the name Duke David Fradin, then a book I recently published, which are letters that my father wrote home during World War II. His name was Hyman, and that's a collection of very humorous letters and experiences called Letters from My Jaime. And in research for that book, I found out that I'm a descendant of French aristocracy, and a former Fradin was anointed a duke by King Louis, I think the fourth, and ignoring the French Revolution, which got rid of it, I too have inherited the title of Duke.
David, that's a nice story. And now you interest me about this book about the letters. It wasn't that good that you mentioned the French side. We live in the border with French people, so we don't like them so much. You know how they are. So it's not like being proud of being French. It's
I'm
important in
sorry.
this side.
Yeah, when I was in fourth grade, I took a whole class in French, and everybody in the class was performing extremely poorly. And the teacher got really, really mad at the students as to why they were not doing too well. And she says, "Why are you not doing well?" And I put up my hand and I said, "It's because we don't like you." And that got me into a whole lot more trouble.
But I'm sure that it was the truth. David, thank you very much for your time. Have a lovely, lovely day.
You too.